There have been several notable father-son duos throughout NBA history. In some cases, both wind up having highly successful and productive careers, while in other cases, one half of the duo falls a bit short of the mark compared to the other. Recently, I made a video comparing 4 of the many father-son duos throughout NBA history, and you guys showed a lot of support and left a bunch of comments of other father-son duos you wanted me to talk about. So now, I'm back with a part 2, and I really want to turn this into a consistent series. So if there's a father-son duo I haven't covered yet, be sure to keep leaving your suggestions in the comments for future videos. Same drill as last time, I'm going to be looking at 4 more father-son duos and seeing how their basketball careers stack up to each other, including their physical intangibles, play styles, career stats, and accolades. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new to the channel and love sports content. Now, let's get into the first duo. The first duo I'm taking a look at in today's video is the Thompson family, with Michael and his son Klay. Starting off with Dad, Michael stood at 6'10", 226 pounds, playing in a bit of a hybrid role as both a center as well as power forward. His offensive game wasn't too flashy, pretty much getting all of his points exclusively around the rim, but it was effective, as he shot over 50% from the field for his career and averaged almost 14 points a game. Additionally, Michael possessed impressive athleticism for his size, with speed and agility that was very rare to see at his position during that time. This made him a matchup nightmare for most bigs during his playing years, and he took full advantage of this by running the floor hard and being a force in transition, which set himself up for a lot of easy buckets. Along with his scoring, he was also an impactful player on the glass as well as defensively, averaging over 7 rebounds and a block per game for his career. In terms of accolades, he was surprisingly never an all-star at any point in his career, but he was a part of the all-rookie team and more notably was a 2-time NBA champion, being a part of the stacked Lakers squads of the late 80s. Also, just a little fun fact, Michael Thompson was the first non-US born player to be drafted first overall. Not entirely relevant to this video, but still a cool little piece of information I wanted to add. This brings me now to his son Klay, who in comical fashion literally couldn't be any more opposite of a player to his dad. Klay measures in much smaller at 6'6", 215 pounds, playing primarily at the shooting guard position. And unlike his dad, who is exclusively an under-the-basket player, Klay does most of his damage on the perimeter, shooting 41% from 3 for his career and being widely considered one of the best shooters in NBA history. Originally coming into the NBA as primarily a catch-and-shoot guy, he's evolved his game over the years to be a highly effective scorer off the dribble, both from 3 as well as in the mid-range, and has a career average of almost 20 points a game. In addition to his incredible shooting, he's also highly praised for his defense, and during his prime was considered one of the top perimeter defenders in the NBA. As a passer and rebounder, however, he's not really much of a contributor, but given his role that he's had on the Warriors, he hasn't really needed to be. This leads me now into his impressive list of accolades, including 4 NBA championships, 5 All-Star selections, and multiple All-NBA and All-Defense selections. Comparing the two together now, both Michael and Klay are highly accomplished players and both have very respectable stats as well. Overall though, I would say Klay has had the better career so far, in large part due to having a much more impressive list of accolades. But at the end of the day, both players had excellent careers and the Thompsons without a doubt are one of the best father-son duos the NBA has ever seen. Up next, we have the Pippen family with Scottie Pippen and his son Scottie Pippen Jr. Now, I'm sure almost all of you are familiar with Scottie Pippen. Measuring in at 6'8", 210 pounds and playing the small forward position, he was the main sidekick to Michael Jordan on the legendary Bulls teams in the 90s, which won 6 NBA championships. When talking about Scottie Pippen, you've obviously got to start with his incredible defensive ability, as he's widely regarded as one of the best perimeter defenders of all time. His size and athleticism made him extremely versatile as a defender, being able to effectively guard multiple positions, and his intensity and effort allowed him to constantly force his opponents into tough shots and turnovers. However, he was much more than just a defender. As a scorer, although he didn't excel in any particular area, he had the ability to score in many different ways. Being a capable shooter from mid-range and 3, and his length and athleticism made him a force in transition and led to many acrobatic and high-flying plays at the rim. He was also an exceptional passer, averaging over 5 assists per game for his career, and was a solid rebounder as well, averaging over 6 per game. Overall, he was the definition of versatile, being able to impact the game in so many ways, and is one of the main reasons why the Bulls were so dominant in the 90s. In terms of his accolades, Pippen was a 6-time champion, 7-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA first-team selection, and an 8-time first-team All-Defense selection, making him him one of the most accomplished players in NBA history. Transitioning now to his son, Scottie Pippen Jr., he's significantly smaller than his dad, measuring in at 6'1", 185 pounds, playing primarily the point guard position. There's not really too much analysis I can give on him right now since he's only in his second year in the NBA, but based on what he has shown, he looks like he could be a really solid player. He's far and away a much more reliable and confident jump shooter than his dad was, shooting 41% from 3, granted on a pretty small sample size. But he's also more than just a shooter, being able to use his speed and quickness to effectively drive to the basket in transition as well as in the half court. As of this video, in the 21 games he's played this season, he's averaging almost 13 points a game, which is quite impressive for a guy in year 2, especially one that was undrafted. Defensively, you can definitely see a lot of the same traits as his dad, playing with a lot of intensity and having really active hands that leads to a lot of turnovers, shown by his average of almost 2 steals a game. As a passer, he's not a wizard by any means, but you can tell he has a good feel at all times of where his teammates are, and more often than not will make the right pass when he needs to. And despite being only 6'1", he's actually pretty solid as a rebounder, averaging over 3 per game. He's basically just a miniature version of his dad, being very well-rounded and able to influence the game in many different ways. Accolades-wise, he basically has none, but given it's only his second year and he has yet to play a full NBA season, he still has plenty of time to get some accolades under his belt. Comparing the two together now, it's obviously not even close as to who the better player is, and even if Pippen Jr. fully reaches his ceiling as a player, I don't think he'll ever be as productive or as accomplished as his dad. Hell, there's very few players in all of NBA history that have a resume that can stack up to his. But I think Pippen Jr. still has loads of potential, and being as he's only 23, he still has plenty of time to develop and establish himself as a solid NBA player. The next duo on deck was definitely one of the more suggested ones, and that's the Sabonis family with Arvydas and his son Domantas. Starting with Arvydas, he was an absolute mountain of a man, measuring in at 7'3", 279 pounds. Now, interestingly enough, Arvydas was actually a highly accomplished international player before coming to the NBA. Although originally being drafted in 1985, due to various different circumstances and injuries I won't go into detail on, he wouldn't make his NBA debut until 1995 at 31 years old, and he'd make an immediate impact once he got onto an NBA court. He's viewed as one of the most versatile big men the NBA has ever seen, being able to score, pass, rebound, and defend at a high level. Given his massive size, he was highly effective around the rim, shooting 50% from the field, but he also had very soft touch for his size, being able to knock down jumpers in the mid-range and occasionally even from 3-point range. And his diverse scoring allowed him to average 12 points a game for his career. As a passer, although averaging only 2 assists per game, he's widely regarded as one of the best passing big men of all time, possessing high IQ and the ability to facilitate the offense, which was a rarely seen skill set for centers at the time. As a rebounder and defender, his size allowed him to easily box out defenders on the glass and be an absolute brick wall as a rim protector. And keep in mind, Arvydas came into the NBA past his athletic prime and after dealing with several significant injuries during his time overseas. In terms of accolades, he doesn't have any of note outside of an all-rookie team, but he is a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame. He's considered by many to be one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history, since just imagine how dominant he could have been if he came to the NBA in his early 20s. In a way, I'd like to think we can get a little bit of an idea of that by looking at his son, Domantas, who although not quite matching the size of his dad, still stands at an imposing 6'10", 240 pounds. Offensively, he has the same scoring versatility as his dad, being highly effective around the rim, but also having the ability to stretch out for shots in the mid-range, as well as the occasional 3-ball, and averaging close to 16 points a game. In terms of rebounding, Sabonis is one of the best in the entire NBA, with a career average of 10.3 a game, and far superior to his dad despite being 5 inches shorter. He's also an exceptional passer for a big man, especially in recent years, so you can definitely see the influence there from his dad as well. Defensively, he's nowhere near the rim protector his dad was, and by all means, he is an average defender, especially struggling with more agile and quick players. In terms of accolades, he's quite accomplished on an individual level, being a 3-time All-Star, 1-time All-NBA third team, and leading the league in rebounding twice. Looking at the two side by side now, this is actually a really interesting comparison. If we're going by basketball careers in general, I think Arvydas is a bit more accomplished as a player, taking his international career into consideration. But if we're strictly looking at their NBA careers, I think Domantas has the slight edge, being more productive statistically and having more individual accolades. You can definitely make an argument for both, and when it comes to NBA father-son duos, this is easily one of the best in NBA history. Lastly, we've got probably one of the more commonly known father-son duos, and that's the Rivers family with Doc and his son Austin. Doc played the point guard spot and brought pretty good size to the position at 6'4", 185 pounds. During his playing days in the 80s and 90s, he was the prototypical pass-first, floor general type point guard, which was very common during the time. He had an incredibly high basketball IQ, which allowed him to be a really effective facilitator, being able to read defenses and make smart passes, which is indicative of his career average of close to 6 assists per game. As a scorer, he wasn't particularly skilled in any area, averaging close to 11 points a game, but he was able to knock down open shots, and his threat as a facilitator kept a lot of defenders on their heels, which would set him up for easy buckets when the defense didn't fully commit to him. Essentially, he was a really smart player on the offensive end that always knew the right time to score and when to pass. Defensively, he was tenacious and gritty, and his high IQ allowed him to put himself in good positions for steals and deflections, shown in his career average of almost 2 steals a game. In terms of his accolades as strictly a player, he was an all-star selection one time, but doesn't have any notable accomplishments besides that. Finishing up with his son, Austin measures in very similar to his dad at 6'4", 200 pounds, playing primarily at shooting guard. In terms of his playstyle, unlike his dad who was more of a pass-first player, Austin is more so in the scoring archetype, being much more skilled in terms of shot creation and overall scoring ability. This might not be reflected in the stats, being as he averages just over 8 points a game, but it's just one of those eye test things where you can just tell Austin is much more gifted as a scorer than his dad was. Outside of scoring though, he really doesn't bring much to the table, not being nearly the same level of passer or defender as his dad. His IQ also isn't quite where his dad's was either. He's not an idiot by any means, he's just not as methodical or calculated, and on the contrary, actually struggles quite a bit with poor shot selection, hence his 42% career shooting average. As we move into the comparison now, I just want to reiterate that I'm looking exclusively at their careers as players, so Doc's accolades as a coach aren't included, but even not taking that into consideration, I think Doc has still had the more successful career. Coming into the NBA, I know Austin was a really hyped up prospect, but he just never lived up to those expectations. Despite having a somewhat underwhelming career though, he still managed to build himself a pretty solid career, being a strong scorer off the bench. So that's 4 more NBA father-son duos compared. If you missed part 1, I'll have it pinned in the comments and also have a playlist made, so be sure to check it out if you haven't already. If there's any other father-son duos you'd like to see that I haven't covered yet, be sure to leave it in the comments so I can get to them in a future video. As always, if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. This is Heatcheck Productions signing off. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm out.